Everybody Saga 깡 기대는 뭐 다시 내래 저도 손빼가 어쩌서 그쪽 되어 있네.
How you doing?
Rinpoche is saying, Tashidele, all the Sangha, I'm so happy to see you all. Are you doing well?
Yes, when?
Come on.
Yes, Rinpoche, we are very well and look forward to hearing your instruction on Paul Yoga Mahamudra today. Thank you, Rinpoche, very much.
Come on. Thank you.
We'll begin with the opening prayers in the Yellow Prayer Book on page 1. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the bodhisattva's path. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Mandala offering. An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms. If I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping, completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Om Guru Deva Dakini Ratna Mandala Prakticha Swoha. Namo. To the Guru, the utter purity of all appearance and existence, I offer all appearance and existence arisen as the primordial ground. I supplicate you. May the 3 realms be completely liberated. Please grant blessings to empty samsara from its depths. Lord with 5 omniscient wisdoms, crown ornament, kind one with loving nature, precious protector of beings, heart of all Buddhas, inexpressible by words or thoughts, I supplicate you from the core of my mind. Bless me from within the state of Dharmata. Bless me to realize this mind, primordially pure and unborn as the unfathomable Dharmakaya. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
아서 저거 저도 저거 라데 잡라서 와데 선선도 저도 좋지 냐토베 보죠 지라서 지도도 하지나 아마 추진은 저도 드린들 자카라 저보지 주로 근디나 말하더니 남절이에 뭐또 셔야래 드린테나 드린나 나 자가 진 삼세거든요 저 지자체 참말에 대해서 이제 송망보리 송망보리는 대해서 레레티는 이제 어디 각각하나 의와상 대 말이 제 탑지 쪽도 두고 요래 엔다다데 사지 좀데 이제 송말이 그 콩크형들이 노트진 잡고는 송은 적진 감의 동타 는 노대 강시과 천주 타대 동적대 동적 나발 공마에 대사 정치 공만 좀 독서지 공원이나 그래 그 보제세 동타 장을 봐서 말이지 정치 동적을 뒤쳐고래 그 강도 뒤쳐고래 다 됩니다 남절제 그 샘을 뒤쳐고래 고대 저다와 샘이서 샘을 뒤쳐고래 샘이 어떤 이 고대 시기 강배 봐요만 랑가 샘을 뒤쳐고래 그다 나와 탐지 랑가 샘송 이 랑에서 비면서 다음이 랑가 샘그 내lok당 그 고대의 최상세기들이 내려고 이제다 대상지 지구안에 빼는 담배는데 약간 로그사와지 그 요리 로드 찍나서 요 말이 대형지 요미 딱체 탈려자와 대리 딱체니 탈려지가 로드 따라 대로 요리 대다가 샘지 내려오게 랑그 샘지 내려오게 하고 속서는 그런 고대의 최상세기자와 고트절이 되라 고대의 자와라를 또 고성 독박지 고성 나는 고대의 자와라를 위해서 대라 다다 사자치 못하는 남들이 제일 맛이 셀성 그래 독박지 보이나 들이다 네 독지 나와지 해서 여러바지를 막하는 로고요리 대통령 주바제비마도 동치부터는 로고요리 동통치랑 그 생물 때문에 랑 생물대로 철고 보요리
Tashitele, to all the Sangha and Dharma friends on the live stream. And today I'm giving you an introduction to the 4 yogas of Mahamudra. And on this topic, actually, for example, the 80 Mahasiddhas of India gave many teachings. So there are many teachings on the 4 yogas. And so that may lead one to think that they are all different teachings. But they are actually not. They all come down to one essential point. And the Buddha Shakyamuni himself had said in the Samadhi Raja Sutra that he said, I have taught the sutras, the teachings, thousands of them in 1,000 different worlds. And while my words are many, distinct, they have a single meaning. And if you cultivate, if you practice the single meaning of all these teachings, then you are actually practicing them all. So the Buddha taught 84,000 different Dharma teachings, endless teachings, but they all have to come down to one single essential point. And what is this point? It is now what we mentioned, what we will talk about today, the 4 yogas of Mahamudra. And what that means is ultimately everything has to come down to the mind, the nature of the mind. It is said that the mind is the basis, the foundation of all of samsaric existence and nirvana. And even though there are limitless sentient beings with a mind, everything comes back down to your own mind, one's own mind. In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, appearances are your own mind. So the nature of your own mind and the nature of all phenomena in samsara and nirvana is the same, is one and the same. It all has a single basis, a single foundation. For example, nowadays in the world, in all the countries in the world, everything is powered by electricity. Everything is done really by electricity. But even though electricity does so many different things, there is really only one electricity. And the electricity itself is without existence or non-existence. It is without any such conceptual limitation. So we should recognize the mind just like that, like really the nature of electric energy. So when you understand the nature of your mind, then you have understood the root of all phenomena in samsara and nirvana. In the Dzogchen teachings, it is said the root of samsara and nirvana is your own intrinsic awareness. And in the Mahamudra teachings, for example, we received the teachings on the 4 yogas. In the Dzogchen teachings, there are 4 visions or visionary appearances. But it all comes down to a single essential point, and that is expounded upon in elaborate ways, in concise ways, but in the end, there's only one single essential meaning. And that is the natural state of your own mind.
나는 요르시바도 책은 고는 나는 요르시바 책대요. 세니 나마드네 주 체점이라들 나마라고 요래. 랑가 생고 주 체점이 만들라 나마드네 어디 내lokte 마토디 이 마모디 샤나들이라 니몽쪽 지선장 다니니랑 차당이 뭐 독기는 내가 저는 처럼으로 자들이 고아를 놓고 싶진 않만 나서 이 감성심인데 차이로래 그때 저 곁들이 왜나 차를 나지 잡고도 저는 차로 차선에 대회들은 대다 차선한테 다 차로는 새 감래당 차를 감래 치고 나서 잡는 차로 치고 가서 가래 요래 대탕대 내lokte 저들 되는 사람 생물함지래 코아도 생물함지래 들이들이 코데가 주탐지 생 코데가 싸워라도 고좀 들이들 랑그 생물대로 되는 파마 들이들 랑대로 하고를 들이 타마하거든요 사진 좀 되게 랑그 내lokte 하고를 들이 상제 내로 광은 무대랑 무고던 심하다 별이 당시 드마타버리 대파 상손들이 차로도 변해시는 제들이 차로들이 잡지 쳐도 예매 받차는 제지 상제의 명단을 들으신 차공대 들으시다 들으는 콘대가 망고 송거래 들이 데려드는 다다 제직들은 오 다다 생은 남도 이제 되는 게 망보요래 들이 장미 받쳐야 되는데 봐서 마음 버티지를 나오는 데라 이제도 감이 때 다니니지 거래 다니니지네 다니니지 때 다차 당지는 당 들이 제가 다 차로 다 보지 차 들이 이제서 내가 못보던 심하게 쉬네 들이 다면 코와도 저 요래 내가 되니 내가 사지에 때 말 생긴 호랑장데 오 차론들 이 처연 마시네 내가 무엇도 전부 잡다 마셔봐 내로랑 그 하고서는 들이 저든 차론 차트고 말 저든 차오는 들이 차론 차트고 말 세부 내lok들이 고당 마셔봐 대다 세부 내lok이 바데 다다 고독 삼바든 니jel을 동당과 동반이를 들고래 대대로 대사는 들이 제대로 상제지 대니 렘나 상제 때 말을 생긴 거는 참 되네 당보 동시바 이바티 대담 만들어 들마도 같은 게 돈이 이제 손에도 받대 사제의 선택에 대담 만들어 들다 상제로 이제 건데서 문문한데 하장 필받쳐 보여래 나로 지금 니는 또 사상 성도 요래 되게 이제 전에 들다 남들 제대로 삼못하나 이 고사고 요래 노남보나 저도 그 요래 가사고 요래
This term yoga is also an important term. So the word yoga in Tibetan is naljo, and so nal comes from nalma, which means nalma means the innate state of mind itself. So it's the innate nature, and innate is something that is always present continuously. It can never cease to be. So that is what we call an innate nature, the nalma. And then when one realizes this innate nature of mind, then everything that is perceived appears as its manifestation. And so normally when we don't realize this natural state, it seems that a great multiplicity arises. And that is because we follow our 6 afflictive emotions. First of all, we perceive a duality of self and other. And because of this perception, we develop thoughts of attachment and anger and so on. The 6 afflictive emotions arise in the mind. And this is how the water-like mind freezes into an ice block. And this is how then limitless sentient beings in the 3 or the 6 realms of samsara manifest. So it is just like the water has frozen due to the cold weather. And then it appears in various forms, like ice cubes or glacier, snow mountains, or ice plates floating in the ocean and so on. So it appears in many different forms, but it all has the same nature. And so similarly, all the various appearances have the nature of the mind. And samsara has the nature of the mind. Samsara and nirvana both. And so that is why it is said, understand that everything, what we call samsara and nirvana, is your own intrinsic awareness. When you realize it, you realize everything, the nature of everything. And so this term, Buddha or enlightenment, so Buddha means in Tibetan Sangye, and Sang means to clear away. And so when one realizes the nature of the mind, what becomes cleared away are the illusory perceptions of a concrete, true existence of appearing phenomena. And realizing that they lack inherent existence, it is like the ice block of the mind is melting. And so once the ice has melted, then the mind becomes vast. And that's the second syllable of Sangye. So Ye means vast or expansive. Then the ice block has merged indivisibly with the ocean and therefore becomes infinite. So that's the meaning of the name, this term Buddha. And so all phenomena of samsara and nirvana come from that natural state of the mind. And so when you recognize that, then first it seems to you that there is such a great multiplicity. Just in one lifetime, if you look around, you feel that even in my own mind there are so many thoughts all the time, just like dust particles in a sun ray. There are just so many. They are infinite. And we follow them all. We think about things of the past and we think about the future. And why is it that we do that? Or what is it that keeps clinging to these thoughts? It is because we grasp fundamentally at a dualistic existence of self and other. And because of this perception, we have a natural attachment to the self and an aversion against other. And this is what has caused the mind to solidify into an ice block. So it is our clinging to the concrete existence of the outer world and then also our concepts about it. So this is what has created samsara. In the Samantabhadra prayer it says, when you recognize this, you are a Buddha. Not recognizing this, you are a sentient being wandering in samsara. So when you recognize this, it is like recognizing actually ice is water and it can be melted. If I do not cling to the concrete existence of appearances and the thoughts in my mind. If you sustain such awareness, then it is like your mind becomes like hot water, and when there is heat, the mind cannot freeze into an ice block. So the nature of mind, the recognition of the nature of mind is like this heat, and you should never separate from it. And so not separating, how we not separate from it is on a relative level. We must never separate from love and compassion. And from the ultimate perspective, we must not separate from the view of emptiness. And so if one never separates from these, one attains enlightenment. And so this is what is meant in the Samantabhadra prayer by saying, if you recognize it, you are a Buddha. Not recognizing it, you are a sentient being wandering in samsara. So first, you have to understand the meaning of that. And then secondly, you must never separate from that. And then finally, in the end, once you have realized, then you cultivate compassion for all those sentient beings who have not realized this. And so this is basically the mind of a Buddha. It's a mind of emptiness and compassion. So that is all explained in the Samantabhadra prayer, which is an extremely beneficial prayer for our practice. When you read it, you will see it really explains everything that is important. And so that is why it really serves as the basis for these teachings on the 4 yogas of Mahamudra. And if you think of it in this way, actually you will understand the meaning quite easily. So that's why we always read the Samantabhadra prayer on an ongoing basis, because it is a very clear instruction.
다용티 가면은 내가 다 제가 로틱되는 이 친구들은 문이 하고서는 이 다 남을 쳐들 뭐 어찌 말이지 그래도 사지 심지는 저기 뭐 하고라 들이 이제 말해봐요 그냥 남자이지 송결이 거리 로망이 희열에 대해서 로틱 그래서 로틱들 고 로틱들 본대니가 로틱이 사지 심지는 저기 하고 온 거래 그래서 대도 하고서 뒤지감이 많이 나 무엇도 집에서 설명을 드리고 고민이 그래서 자기에서 몇 돌하고 봐 됐다 차 됐다 남들에게 생물을 말을 비게 돼 그래 연락을 사람을 받대 찌잖아 제식이 오래 말이시나 연락은 이제 말이 밖에 송가 제주도 가야지 돈이 이제 살랑 세발라시 살람들을 봐 마세람스 람다 달제 와시 진짜 제들 무슨 양이 세면 던져 람다 이거 그래지 람다 가래요 그래들 피타 시점터가 되는 신이 레점들을 가서 쳐뭐 뭐다 니몽에 봐들 나지 니지니 니몽에 봐 니몽 미들 니몽 께 니몽 셔도 그래 니몽 께서 열 나지 니지메 하고 성사는 니몽 셔도 되게 뭐다 니몽에 봐들 니몽 아주 받게 되면 뒤용띠들 아주는 존나 사람을 막 탐지 사달람지 용띠 그저 찌르지 좋고 그래 나보 짜라고 대사를 하거나 이때 잠들리는 그냥 까tip지다도 생각을 이렇게 강시지도 뭐 보시고 저들이 다다들 해보지 때지 콩라하게 그 가사깔이 다 강인지 보자는 저도 쇼요 그래 그 하게 설삼설삼 따라고 쉬어시 따라요 주장은 봐 그냥 아무리 가오를 때들이 뭐 가오를 때 시에랑 기타니도 그래 때문에 그러니까 이거 때문에 대체로 가오를 때 나게 저도 되게 잡혀야 돼.
And so the 4 yogas of Mahamudra, also they are related to the graduated path of, there is the bhumis and the paths. And regarding the bhumis and the paths, or the stages and the paths, the sutra teachings expound on that really elaborately. There are many teachings on that. But what are the bhumis and the paths? So for some people like myself who do not have so much learning, how can we understand that? So a bhumi, or a stage, is basically the stages in which we recognize the nature of the mind. So basically we recognize the nature of the mind in stages gradually. And so that is really the meaning of saying having attained a bhumi. And then the paths, so there are 10 bhumis and 5 paths. In order to attain the 10 bhumis, one must enter the 5 paths. So if one enters the 5 paths, one attains the 10 bhumis. Now this is probably how it is. But then the Khenpos and your other spiritual teachers and so on, they all teach much about that. So also regarding the bhumis and the paths in brief, Milarepa had said, now what is the so-called progression of the bhumis and the paths is the increasing appearance of clarity and emptiness. So the increasing realization of clarity and emptiness within the mind. And so that is what we call the bhumis and the paths. So basically it's an increasing seeing of the nature of the mind gradually. Yeah? And so everything has to, so you have to understand that everything must come down back to your own mind. So first you have to see your own mind. You have to understand your own mind. And once you have seen it, you must habituate to this seeing until you realize it. And so as you continue to practice, the qualities inherent within yourself will reveal themselves more and more. It's like the growing of a flower. So first you have a sprout, and then it grows into like a closed flower, and then an opened flower. And so this is how it is taught in the Vajrayana teachings, in the context of the 4 yogas of Mahamudra. And also, everything is connected. The 4 yogas are connected to the 4 levels of empowerment and so forth. And so a feature of these teachings, the Vajrayana teachings, is that we are introduced to the nature in a very direct way. So these are the bhumis and the paths in brief. And so, for example, how our mind is currently, it is just like muddy water. It's still water, and in the beginning it was clear water, that's the nature, but temporarily it has become polluted by mud, so it becomes muddy, it's not so clear. But then if you keep purifying it over and over again continuously, which is similar to meditating continuously, then eventually the mud will settle and you will see the nature of water, the nature of your mind. And so in the 4 yogas of Mahamudra, the first one is the one-pointedness, and so that is this settling down of the mud, so you come to see the true nature. So it is the meditation where everything calms down first, and then you habituate to this over and over again. And then once the water has become clear, then you can do all kinds of things with it. Then it becomes useful. And so then you move on. So once it becomes useful, you move on to the second yoga, which is the unelaborated stage. And so here in the second stage, you continue to meditate without analyzing, thinking in terms of, is it in terms of existence or non-existence, without any conceptual limitations. So that is, as Milarepa had said, you continue on the same meditation, but the empty, clear mind just becomes increasingly clear as you keep meditating. And so that's what we call the bhumis and the paths, the different stages. Even though they're given different names, it's just an increasing becoming clear of your natural state. And so most of us, we begin with the shamatha practice, calm abiding. So most of us practice that. So we can say that shamatha, or calm abiding, is actually equivalent with the one-pointedness. And so then once you have achieved one-pointedness, you can abide in a single-pointed state, then you come to the unelaborated state, the second state, and that is the state of vipassana, or the special insight. So once you have become one-pointed, then you can see the nature of the mind, how it really is. So this is how I see it, how there really is a connection between one-pointedness and shamatha, and freedom from elaboration and non-elaboration, and vipassana. So this is how I see it, but I do not have much learning. So then number 3, the third yoga, is the yoga for one taste. So that is then next, once you have seen the true nature of the mind, then next you begin to realize that it is just like all the water in the world. You begin to realize that even though it appears in so many different forms, it's all the same water. You realize that Buddhas and sentient beings are one and the same. Also Milarepa actually had given teachings on the 4 yogas of Mahamudra that I had explained to most of my disciples. And so in any case, the one taste is where you realize that samsara and nirvana, everything has one taste. You realize that everything is actually the same, everything is one. And then you continue to meditate within that state. And so once you have realized that, if you then always remain unmovingly within that state, and you never again fall into confused states of grasping at the concrete existence of appearances and thoughts in the mind and so on, then finally you achieve the fourth yoga, which is the yoga of non-meditation. And this is an effortless state. So this is how the four yogas really are a gradual development of the realization of the mind. So even though we list different bhumis and different paths, and there's different teachings on that, this is really how we should see it. So this is also a very important teaching, the most important teaching really by Milarepa, where he said that the bhumis and the paths, the so-called bhumis and the paths, are the progressive realization, recognition of the clear and empty nature of the mind. And so then he continued on, but the bhumis and what is called the bhumis and the paths are nothing but how do you call it, like kind of like signs, like road signs. So you know where to go. They are just road signs. You know where you're at. So a practitioner needs some kinds of signs so they know they are on the right track. And for example, what are some road signs that guide us? For example, it is said that a sign of learning or hearing is a peaceful and subdued disposition, kind of behavior. And one will also consider karma very carefully. And a sign of meditation is an absence of afflictive emotions. So even though afflictive emotions do arise, they disintegrate instantly. And that is because you have understood that the object of your affliction is not separate from yourself. So you have recognized that self and other are indivisible. And so because of that, even though a momentary affliction may arise, an ordinary, unrestrained affliction cannot arise any longer once you have recognized this. And this is how gradually the qualities of your own mind reveal themselves as you progress on the bhumis and the paths. And ultimately, all those qualities are perfected within you in any moment. So again, first you have to understand the root of this. And then you have to continue to practice continuously. And so I am giving you an introduction on that topic to the best of my abilities, but it's more of an outline of the subject. But if you want to go in more depth, then we have many teachers like Khenpo Tenzin or other teachers all over the place that you can always receive teachings from. So I'm just giving like a kind of an introduction to the basic view on this topic. So I'm explaining this to you, Dharma friends, because you all, like me, an old man, and you want to listen to me. And if you like somebody, we usually like to listen to them. And so that's why you like to listen to me. It's not because I have a lot of learning or anything like that. It's because you like me and you like to listen to me. And so therefore, I'm going to do my best to explain this topic.
Nam to the Jinkin did, Nam she did, sorry, you did not but sorry, you let it, says only, none the percent, Nam she did it. Nam to the Tama watches, Chimki, Nam she did your body. Nam she did all a Matoba career, Nam she did, Nam she think it, not to the ninth of our level. Not the Nam she hear me, but Charlie or the Martin who put the Baccarat, Luda, your Tamata. So when you did not listen to the important Sima, that was a dodo Charlie or did important Sima, did not what you said to the little Pachayo. Pachayo did less about the text in Coatomore. 대응 당호 가리 신기는 샘도 신기 남시들이샤 남시들 때도 남도 참아 남시들이 그 남시들 뭐 첫탁기 땅들이 남시들 뭐 또 이시 줄로요 이시를 메로래 들이 이시 마음이는 남시들이 시지 제발 가려야 되는 남시한테 나이니 요래 느끼니 요래 무엇도 치마 제로코 탐고 요래 들이 이시르다 내로도 나이니메와 하고 나이니메와 살아 샘로 나이니메와 하고 들이 이시지 들이 이시로들이 자상 이시로들 저기 이시르다 이메왜 들이 가려내들이 샘이 치고로 차로들이 선이메와도 차용을 들이 납치 이시는 보지 들이 대 마음이 바깥들이 들이지 남조이자들 왕자던 저고 오송 말을 배송을 남조이자들 왕자를 이제 가려져 하는 게 싸움을 들이다 범왕자 때문에 들이 깨름 범왕자 제작을 와요송을 제가 하자 팽기를 범왕 깨름을 들이는데 내 공자야 들이 가려져 와요 이제 대라고 싸움했던 걸 말이 깨름 되게 땅보다 치마를 시인들이 돼 내로 것들이 되나 성무적이나 무슨 탐지 제거랑 좀 따봐 샤트가 말함다 문에서 차디올 때 하고 말이 나불 사강 잡타만 보면 대기 말이 타락절도 이제 로버트 저요래 로버트 저는 좀 타되면 따봐라니 대학 참여시 요래 저렇게 되라 오다 나불 사강에 같이 토도 하고 그것도 그것도 지금 요래 배대에다 그 성민적인 남주 셉지 담지 내가 최초가 주제라고 좀 따봐야지 대처 딱 깨도 생도 딱 깨도만 들이 깨름 들이 작동하고 곰 들이 조른 들이고 다 좋다면 따봐 동대 시니 내가 잘들이 조른 곰 들이 다 그냥 각은 나와도 깨름을지 이 나버가 들이 조른을 좀 대도리 들이랑 이거 세면 우디인데 다 오면 우디 양다양도 깨는 거나 야통들 들이 미인들 들이 마음이 다 왕송 대 하던데 배받침 뭐래 무보다 치마들 들이 예를 들이 미인송을 가려래 센 나와서 이제 통되나 문일이 띠보리 딱 띠면들 말이 싸우는 요 말이 뺏어 하고서는 나 선수지 되나 비생지 탐지 딱 보리 띠보리 요 말이 뭐 따봐 라지를 하고 말이 들을 생내로 자면 세상까지 살아나 델리 양단 초나 되니 무엇도 짐을 봐 속이로 말이 나 동지 저다 나와 통제랑 그 샘지 들이 열리에들랑 그 샘을 줘야 하고 인생도 딱선이 저기마다 하고 들이 하고니 들이 대하고서 듣고 와도 차로 대sem거야 내가 뭐래 말이 강사문 말이 들이 다리서 말하면 뭐리 안된 좋고요 뭐 말이 안된 좋고요 말 sem거내로 고라를 하시게 되는 람지가 매바 차대 들이 들이 sem때 저런 거 빠져 좀 보고 와서 들이 봐요 봐서 다 봐요 봐서 차대 봐요 봐가지고 빌려봐 가봐가 원하는 요아마사 매야마사 요사바가 무엇인 주제 거로 싸우노당 매마사들이 랑 사베랑지 요래 작동성 요데 그 세상에 무엇 지만 매와들 또물하기 이제 샤데들이랑 내가 셈 무조건 서로 열렸으면 무엇도 지만 지봐 매마사 사베랑지 작동성 요데 세세는 때문에这个做这个他搞定这得他吧，理查么的，这讲，你没他把这搞的，我都是么那多几身上，这让来啥样把别个往这里，甚至把查么的，这些把有用了这把查这个用嘛的，这他做，你那个当哈可能，这那么些的，这些把有这个这种。这些把有的呢，卡的那的那个 진짜 봐도 잘 들들 매기는데 저기 뭐 정말 저기 뭐 그러면은 사람을 봐서 그렇게 세비 띠바 토를 문제들이 전쟁 총선 때 맹딱을 당 저기 받았다 돈 가리고 거도 라그스를 맞지 셈싸고 내가 시집을 진실 내고도 이제 뭐 저기 진실이 돼 대하고도 저기 하고 요래면은 대타고도 고고를 해야 돼.
And so how should we understand first the one-pointedness? So for as long as we have not realized the nature of the mind, we call our mind the consciousness. And in the consciousness, many different thoughts appear, limitless thoughts, hundreds of thoughts. There are hundreds of different thoughts constantly arising, but there is only one consciousness that recognizes all of these thoughts. The thoughts arise because the consciousness, which is the inner grasping mind, connects to an outer object. And then that leads to all kinds of thoughts arising in the mind. So even though there are many thoughts, there is just a single consciousness. It's always the same consciousness. And so for as long as we have not realized the nature of mind, this consciousness, at the very bottom of this consciousness, we have the self. It all comes down to the self, the me. So currently, the me, this I, and the consciousness have become one. And so everything we grasp from my perspective, the I perceives a concrete outer existence and believes in the various concepts arising in the mind and clings to the true existence of their own body and all the other outer forms and shapes. That is the consciousness. And so the consciousness is a state where everything has become solidified and it seems to be real. The solid reality seems to be real because of the solidified clinging to a concrete existence. So this solidified grasping, it is constantly grasping at dualistic thoughts, has caused the layers of karmic imprints to deepen in the mind. And so because we keep placing imprints into our mind, we continue to accumulate karma. And that is what creates samsara. So first we have to understand this basis, which is the consciousness. Everything arises from this consciousness, which currently we identify with the I. And so from that arise a multitude of thoughts, but then there's just one consciousness. So for this reason, what we really need to analyze, look at, is the nature of that consciousness. And it is that when you realize its nature, then it matures into primordial wisdom. So not in an immature state, it is the consciousness. In the mature state, it is the primordial wisdom. And so what's the difference between them? The consciousness perceives a dualistic existence of self and other, and the universe and many different beings. And the consciousness believes in a concrete existence of appearances and one's own concepts. So everything has kind of melted with this I, with how one sees kind of through the lenses of the I. But then when you realize the nature of this consciousness, it becomes primordial wisdom, because then you realize that self and other are actually not separate. And once you see that, then the mind becomes primordial wisdom. And it is said that within the expanse of primordial wisdom, all the Buddhas are one. So you realize that there is no duality, no separation. Everything is one mind. There is no outer and no inner and no self and other and so forth. This is also called the consciousness transferring into that state, or kind of transforming into the state of primordial wisdom. So how should we recognize each of these four levels of four yogas? Milarepa also said that everything is connected. The four yogas, for instance, are connected to the four empowerments, and we should practice always making this connection. And so how can we make this connection? So personally, when I was thinking about it, the connection I made is that, so first when we receive the first empowerment is the vase empowerment, which is the empowerment of the generation stage, the visualization. And that is connected to the yoga of one-pointedness. And so seeing it in this way I find very beneficial. And also really connected to the way we practice the Vajrayana. And so then maybe you think that, but no, it's not really connected, because isn't the generation stage and the vase empowerment supposed to be elaborate visualizations, and isn't one-pointedness just supposed to be meditation? So maybe people see that it's not quite the same. But actually, this is not true. It is actually the same, because now that generation stage, the visualization, the purpose of generation stage is to overcome our fixation on the concrete existence of appearances, to realize that whatever appears, outer and inner, the world and all sentient beings, all appearance only appears momentary, but actually, because due to being compounded phenomena, everything that appears is impermanent. It is just like what you're viewing is just like the dream of a single night. And so actually there is no discrepancy between a generation stage and meditation because of this essential point. Or for example, even though the outer world appears so solid and stable, and there's hundreds of different worlds and planets, in the end, none of it will stay, and it will all turn into dust. It is just a momentary, a temporary appearance, and it will all end and disintegrate, because the nature of all appearance is impermanence. For example, science even has understood that to some extent. Now, they speak about, we don't know when this world is coming to an end, it might be coming to an end, and then everybody is afraid about that. So the world is coming to an end, because all appearance is just like a temporary bubble, a temporary water bubble, impermanent by nature. And so that is therefore not what we analyze. What we analyze is the mind. And when you look at the mind and you visualize the generation stage, what appears, the generation stage, the deity, is like a rainbow in the sky. And a rainbow is empty of self-nature. And also at the end of the visualization, we come to the completion. So at the end, everything dissolves. And that is correlated to one's understanding of impermanence. So this is how the generation leads to the completion or the dissolution. Or we can say that the daytime perception, our waking state perception, the clinging to the truth of the waking state perceptions is overcome through the visualization, the generation stage. And then at night, when we go to sleep, we enter into the completion stage of dissolution. So then this is how they become unified, generation and completion. And through this unifying, all grasping at a concrete reality becomes purified. And so then if we keep meditating on it again and again, all appearances will begin to appear like rainbows in the sky, and we mature. The empowerment is also called a ripening or maturing empowerment. So it's very beneficial to make these connections. Then when the mind has matured, how do things appear? So things, outer appearances still manifest, you still see them, but there is no thought of that's real and that's lasting, that's a real thing. There's no such a thought. And there's no such a thought also with regard to sentient beings. There's no thought of they're real and it will always last and so on. Because one has realized that everything is impermanent. And this is when one has recognized the natural state of the mind. So although appearances still manifest, everything manifests, there is no mental proliferation that pursues any thoughts of a concrete reality, any kind of thought of this is real. So that is what we call appearance emptiness, or empty appearances. So again, appearances are your own mind. The basis of all appearance is your own mind. And you should understand that your mind and others' minds is one and the same. And when you understand that, then you actually recognize the one taste. Everything becomes the same. So there is no analysis then of what arises. It begins with not grasping at anything as real, which leads to a transcendence of extremes. So there's no more side, taking of side, like this or that, or existence or non-existence. Both kind of become the same. Both sides become the same. And so single-pointedness, to summarize again, is related to the base empowerment. And that empowerment is also related to constantly maintaining mindfulness. So single-pointedness, one-pointedness, is to always be in a state of conscientiousness. In whatever you do, you are aware, you're alert. And so, for example, when you're in a room together with many other disciples, if you're mindful, then you're not beginning to think about those other disciples in terms of they're here or they're not here, they exist, they don't exist. There's no mental analysis like that. You know that everything that appears is compounded and therefore impermanent, and there simply is no thought about anything. Then the mind just remains naturally clear. And so this is what we call the union of clarity and emptiness. So on the outer level, things still appear, but you recognize at the same time that they lack any true inherent existence. And so things can appear, but there is no grasping at them whatsoever. But the mind continues to sustain clarity, which is clear mindfulness. And so this is how you master, how you perfect one-pointedness. And then you continue on in that state all the time. And if you're, so this is what happens when you always continue in that state. There's no more, you don't perceive things in this concrete, real way. And then what happens when we see it, but then we are not able to sustain that state? So then we again see things, we think that's real, and we follow it. So we follow our thoughts about that thing, and that causes us to accumulate karma. So it happens basically because we are unmindful. It is because of unmindfulness that we create karmic imprints over and over again. If you are mindful, then actually you cannot form any further karmic imprints or these habitual tendencies in your mind. So that's really the crucial point to understand here. What's most important in your practice is to sustain mindfulness at all times. And so as you continue through these different levels, you basically develop this ability to always be in a state of mindfulness. And so then there are many different subdivisions, many different divisions in the 4 yogas of Mahamudra, depending on how deep, how strong our mindfulness has become. So for example, the one-pointedness has a 3-fold division of greater, middle, and lesser, and so on. and so forth. Each of them has this division. And so basically it shows how the mind becomes increasingly stable. So first there is one-pointedness, and so what we need to understand here, that basically the essential point of one-pointedness is to stay in a state of mindfulness at all times. And the state of mindfulness is a state of clarity. Your mind is clear all the time. So this is what you develop in one-pointedness. And so once you've understood that, then you have to habituate to that, familiarize yourself with that over and over again.
se zongda chero kare na tela ngo tan chima tela tini semla pakcha tsawa chimo le dong yore dari koli koala tini ta ni di sar de yoba kani tong si ba kare tong gore ni di de tong gore ni di de koala tini ta ni me la ha ko da sen ko da ni me la ti koala chane ti koala tini nyola tini kadi sensa wa kadi ne rāñjīng kua de tōk tani, nidī tōng kare. Nidī de tōng sōng na, tani di diwa chīmbo yore. Dungi tamche, dungi tsua chara de rāpa ka chādāng ni, chā ka redō ni, tēdā mabdā ka tani dungi tsua de tēdā sōg yore. Tē nidī mei tsura kare shārtana tā nā tōng rāwa chā, nāng diri sāwa nāng ka yore, tēdā tōngdari nidī mei pa sēmdari, tēri tsua jōku yō mārī, tā mēlōngda ka sōngī tāwa sō, ngāng tōngdari kūsa chāyō mārī, tēri tēri sā tōng dēnyāṃ jīnsē sī, tēri tāwa tī tsua chīgō, tēri sēmi hānyā jībō yō rī, tēri dēwār shīngi, dēwār tētā shīngi ngō mārī, tī sā tōng dēnyāṃ jīn tī, tā rō nyōng nī, tēri tī kādī yīngā tēri jī, tā gōm jāpa kārā dōkt, gōm jāpa kārā mēwā chādiri tī, 예를 들때 용기 갈 공자 먹거라 나또 가르치는 나또 탐치한테라 이게 식도고요 쳐달라나기 가르치 식도 니디메 베식으로요 니디메 식도고요 말 첼첼도고요 첼랍디야 당부 총총들이 첼첼도들이 말합지 못 참을 빼대다 니디메들 나또 자체로요 이제 가래 나노로래 대도 사통 대량진이 당어대 가르치는 사월에 생사월에 동들 가에 니디메 무슨 좀 봐야면 의미 좀 봐매 오야 니디메 뒤들 다 대화를 안 쳐거든 기억을 뒤 도다도 좋아지 생각도 기아도 문제 오래지
And so what is then an experience of one-pointedness? It is said that it is an experience of a great bliss that is based on clarity and emptiness. A clear and empty, an experience of great bliss that is clear and empty. And so clarity here, clear, means that the mind is clear and without distraction. Mindful. And what does emptiness mean here? It means that you do not engage in the conceptual thinking of me and him, a duality of self and other. There is no intellectual thinking, there's no thought, no conceptual thinking. So normally our thought, this notion of me, I, is so firm. It's always really there. And when it comes into contact with any sense object, like a form, a sound, smell, taste, touch, and so on, whatever it connects to, immediately there is a feeling of a natural feeling that this is real and this is concrete and one has an idea about it. And so once this grasping at a concrete reality is there, then these objects will generate very strong feelings, sensations within us. And so these feelings, once a feeling is generated, an imprint is placed into the mind. So first you need to understand that. And so then a duality is cleared away. That's the meaning of emptiness. So what needs to be empty? I mean, the mind needs to be empty of dualistic thought. And that is something that develops on the basis of first an understanding, like an intellectual understanding. You understand that self and other do not actually exist separately. So you can understand that on the level of mind, there is no duality. And so then how it becomes an experience is that whenever you meditate and your mind is in a state of clarity, you're clear, then actually it happens on its own through the power of your prior understanding. When you actually are in a state of meditative clarity, duality will naturally disintegrate. There is no dualistic grasping. So the experience really arises through the power of your understanding. And then when the mind is free of dualistic thought, that is a state of great bliss. Because what we call suffering actually is nothing else but our thoughts, the thoughts in our mind. And mainly it's either attachment or aversion. So on the coarse level, it's attachment and aversion or hatred. And the more subtle counterparts to attachment and hatred are hopes and fears. So it's all of these thoughts, this thinking in our mind that creates all of the suffering. So therefore, when you're separated from that, when there is no grasping, no thinking in your mind, then naturally you're in a blissful state. So when there is no dualistic thought in the mind, things still appear, but appearances are seen as empty of self-nature. Because you do not grasp at a duality, meaning you have no dualistic thought about these appearances. And because you do not think of them in a dualistic way, they also will not generate a feeling in your mind. So there is no feeling or karmic imprint that is placed in the mind. The mind is just like a mirror, and what appears is like a reflection in a mirror. So this is how the experience of empty appearances begins to arise. And when it is recognized, when empty clarity is recognized, that is an experience of great bliss. So it is a state where the mind is just extremely happy, extremely joyful. So great bliss. And then when you continue on through no elaboration and one taste, you just continue on in that state. You always meditate in that state. And finally you reach an effortless state of non-meditation where this state never leaves you again. And so for now, in the beginning, when we meditate, then it happens that we are mindful, that we are in that state. But then when we are not in formal meditation, then all kinds of thoughts arise again in our mind. And at that time, it's very difficult for us to just let go of all these thoughts. We can just do that when we are in meditation. And the reason, basically, really why we are unable to let go of our thoughts is really because we cling to a dualistic existence of self and other. So for as long as you cling to that, there is no way you can ever really let go of all these thoughts. They will just grow stronger and stronger. But just when you begin to recognize that each and every small dualistic thought, then gradually they become weaker. Otherwise, if you just let them pass by, then it might just be a small thought in the beginning, but then you can't let go of it, so it turns into a very powerful thought, like a huge ocean wave. Then it becomes very strong. So therefore, in the beginning, we slowly disintegrate, or let go of the various thoughts that appear in the mind. through practice. And then so ultimately we come to an experience of great bliss, the great bliss of this empty clarity. So again, the clarity is a state of mindfulness, and emptiness is a state that is free of dualistic thinking. So there is no thought about anything whatsoever. There's no thought of something is true, something is real, and also no thought of something is not true. And this state is naturally very blissful. So a very blissful and joyful feeling arises in the mind. And so this is how you should recognize all appearances, all thoughts and appearances within your mind and outside.
Nam gong gong war, the chick chungergy. Rima gom jang thing is the roger gombete, people the thing to war song. Oh, Tata get the pamby don't have watery, but don't you let you make the chick chungery. Oh, but to my god, I've been a come sometimes, Kadi, then Titola go to a pound daughter, Kalimila, they didn't do more. Oh, the Nimsi Koyo de me paso. This is a Kadina, Lamsanti, Shitani, Setabang, it is a cable song, the Sakin and the non somebody, the Kira. Salam Rabati, you know, so rather Nams no carry, don't not go no goes. Not go, not go, Manu, you say, Tani Tawa. Tengmaker Tawa Tengmaker, Nididi, same like Nima, the Hammer, the Tawa Teng Tokyo, Mary. The guardian, the Tawa, that was so Mima was the same gesture parade. Same gesture parade, Neo Marisa, that tiki tissue, the Chilate, he parted the room at the chicken level of the
So what's the most important point about the one-pointedness? Milarepa said, as we said before, we need kind of a landmark, a road sign. That's very important. And what is that in the context of one-pointedness? It is that like a sign basically of one-pointedness is one's ability to subdue or kind of suppress the thoughts. So for now, they are just held at bay. Thoughts are held at bay. And what that means is that you don't begin to grasp at thoughts. When thoughts are not held at bay, and you're grasping at thoughts, then you go either into the affirming way direction or the negating direction. Either it exists or it doesn't exist. Whichever way you go, in the Saga, it says, if there is grasping, any grasping, you do not actually see the view or kind of see the nature of the mind, the true nature. So therefore, if you just let it all be, whatever arises, you don't grasp at it, you just let it be as it is, it will naturally subside, just like a wave on water. So that is the one-pointedness, really. And one-pointedness, according to this text here, so we have an instruction by Dharma Kirti, the Drikung Chudog, on the 4 yogas of Mahamudra. There is first a threefold division of one-pointedness. the lesser, medium, and the greater one-pointedness. And it says, at the stage of lesser one-pointedness, it is still difficult to maintain a state of samadhi that possesses the experience of empty clarity and bliss. This stage lasts until one can easily experience such a samadhi whenever one meditates. Then second, at the stage of medium one-pointedness, one's samadhi is stable. At times, samadhi even occurs without engaging in meditation as one goes about various activities. And then third, at the stage of greater one-pointedness, throughout the 4 activities, day and night, the meditation state becomes an uninterrupted experience without divisions of formal meditation and post-meditation. So we are basically moving from a state of effort to an effortless state. And so in the beginning, at the lesser one-pointedness, the meditation still requires an effort to be able to stay one-pointed. And then in the medium one-pointedness, then whenever you meditate, you really set your mind, it doesn't create you too much difficulty. You can meditate. And then when you come to the greater one-pointedness, then you are always in a one-pointed state, continuously. For example, when you wake up instantly, you are already in a state of mindfulness. So this is how Dharmakirti here explains the different stages. And so mainly what's most important to understand about one-pointedness is what experience do we need to gain ultimately from one-pointedness. We need to gain the ability to hold our thoughts at bay, so complete control over the thoughts. And for as long as one doesn't have that control, one has not yet gained a complete, what's called an assurance, like a confidence in the view, because one will still grasp at a duality. And for as long as one sees a duality, one cannot gain complete confidence in the actual view, the nature of the mind. So if one has gained such confidence in the nature of the mind, then, for example, even though there are a lot of people around you, you know that we are actually not separate. There is no duality. It all has one basis. So that's the most important kind of road mark for the one-pointedness. So one-pointedness is achieved. The result of one-pointedness is achieved if you sustain an ongoing state of mindfulness.
Dawa console or Yami Chevacami, Karinami, Dingni, you did say in how the Dangni Marico, the Mataba rate, thus Saji Subanaji, Mataba rate, Sedi, Pai, for the shock to the low, the Tapana shock to the low, the Children Daga, Yumati, they were it. They about the Kashi, Lavinamli, the Chilas, what you could have been, the Saraswati, but Jaggery, they have the Yamisi, but from day Tato to day, Counter Samba Tata Nang, the Ranga Sevitonter, the Batest of the Hakon, the state of the Slap of the Moo Children, the Eba Children, Tritel important seminar, Mudia Meba, Muguya Yoba, Niji Yoba, the head of the child, the death of the teacher, you it.
So how does it become when we have gained some experience in the practice of one-pointedness? For example, when we practice a sadhana, then a certain feeling arises in us. So, for example, while you're doing the visualization, you meditate on a deity, or you're doing a drupchen retreat, during that time, there is maybe we can call it a mere aspiration toward it, but what we really think is real is still our real life. So we still think that. So that's good, but what's the real? It's not real. What is real is my life. So that's how we still think, because we still have a dualistic grasping in the mind, and that actually is a sign of not yet having mastered one-pointedness. It's a sign of not having really mastered the view, the natural state. Now, if you have really habituated to it, then whatever practice you engage in, you will see that as real, more real than your real life, the world out there. You will see the world out there as not as real, because as the Buddha had said, everything is compounded and therefore impermanent. And so a sign also is that the grasping at this life will get lesser and lesser, and your pure perception, a pure view, increases more and more. So these are the qualities of one-pointedness that should arise. For example, some people, when they practice a deity or when they join a Drupchen retreat, they have a very special feeling, sensations that arise within them, which are also signs of practice. And so it is said that a sign of practice then is that whatever you can think of in the mind, this is what appears. So whatever is your state of mind, this is what appears. So such a person understands that whatever appears is the magical play of one's own mind. And also another sign is that one's faith and devotion grows stronger and stronger. And one's dualistic thoughts become weaker. And one's compassion for others increases. One's grasping at the true existence of appearances and one's own thoughts disappears. So these are the qualities of one-pointedness.
뭐 촉치고 빼는 세상 치보지요 가도 땅을 광고잖아 세상들 가래더니 저런 추어시와는이 데미로 땅아 저쪽 달 때도 없어 그랑도 타게 줘야 돼.
And then there's one more sign of one-pointedness, and that is, so we have said a sign of meditation is an absence of afflictive emotions. So to correlate that with one-pointedness, so when a very strong affliction arises, that's when you have to be able to meditate. For example, you get really angry, and then you remember right away, I have to meditate. And then you meditate, and then slowly, like ice melting, the anger goes away. So when that is the case, then you can be confident and really determine that that is I have basically mastered the yoga of one-pointedness. Remember Milarepa's words. And what were Milarepa's words? He said, one-pointedness is the ability to hold your thoughts at bay, to suppress them. So remember that and think that actually I'm able to hold them at bay. So then you can kind of stay really what do you call, like really cool. You know, I can do that.
Thank you, Emin and Garchen Rinpoche, very much for your precious teaching. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Dear Dhamma friends, after Garchen Rinpoche leaves the room, after he leaves the room, please spare some time for the organizer, some announcement. And now everyone can turn on your video and audio to say thank you and goodbye to Garchen Rinpoche. Please turn on your video and audio so that Rinpoche can see and hear. Thank you, Garchen Rinpoche.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you,
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Rinpoche.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you, Rinpoche la. Rinpoche la. Thank you, Rinpoche la. Thank you, Rinpoche la.
Rinpoche, Rinpoche, obrigada.
Tomorrow, Rinpoche la. Tomorrow, Rinpoche la. Long life Rinpoche la. Long life Rinpoche la. Long life Rinpoche la. Long life Rinpoche la.
Bye bye.
Understand your teaching more.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
May your teaching is good offer.